Newcastle United training ground where myself and Jordan have been speaking to Eddie Howe ahead of Newcastle United's Premier League match against Sheffield United at St James's Park, surrounded by other members of the media.
Got Craig over there.
Craig Hope, shout out to his channel. Keith Downey as well.
Doing his live Sky Sports feed.
So if you hear them, check their videos out. But
don't watch us, only us.
Well, if you're watching us now, then you've won. Won the battle. So do you want to start on injuries? Because that it's sort of paled in comparison. Because I thought that was one of Eddie Howe's best press conferences of the season in terms of what he gave and what he said. But injury front, there's no real update. Sheffield United, nothing really changes. Tino Livramento will be assessed. He obviously made the bench but didn't get on against Crystal Palace. Callum Wilson got through that game okay. No Miguel Almiron, no Joe Linton, no Nick Pope, no Kieran Trippier.
Matt Target as well, season-ending, potentially injury. It's a real scoop from you, that one.
Scraping the barrel a little bit, wasn't it? It was just Matt Target. We haven't spoke about him in a while. Hasn't played since November. Is he out for the season? Eddie Howe said most likely, or he probably will be. So season-ending injury blow. Another one for Newcastle, but
never plays.
Would he have played? So the likes of Almiron is probably the closest.
They're about to use for Burnley next week, didn't he?
And then Trippier, Joe Linton, Nick Pope, close. We'll expect to see them before the end of the season. But I think the big news, the big one, Bruno Guimaraes, his contract situation, his future, what's going on. I thought Eddie Howe was refreshingly open.
Yeah,
good questions though, I thought, from not me or Jordan, but people over there.
We had the same question today.
Yes, Bruno obviously it broke last night through
transfer expert Fabrizio Romano.
Yes, how that got leaked probably through quite obvious sources, but yes, Bruno Guimaraes' £100 million release clause is only actually in effect from the end of May to the end of June. And Eddie Howe was asked that and confirmed it.
Yeah, he did, which didn't expect to do.
No.
Thought you would have cleverly batted around the question, if you like.
He was coy initially, wasn't he? Because I think it was Luke Edwards who asked about the contract.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm aware of Bruno's contract. Then the follow-up after that was...
Craig Hope, a hard-hitting, presuming.
Watch the press conference. The answer caught even Craig off guard. He didn't know what to say.
But it was a straight question about Bruno, about his release clause, about that the time period, and Eddie Howe spoke about it and did indeed confirm it. Said it was clever business, smart business by the club.
Smart by the club to put a time frame on it, and I suppose he's right. I guess that's a big discussion for this video, I think, because that time frame, obviously it helps Newcastle in terms of the PSR for this season.
Absolutely,
it comes in before the end of the 2023-24 season's calculation, so if you're getting that 100 million, not that you want to sell Bruno by any means, but if you can get that fee, which, let's be honest, how would you value Bruno? Is that there or thereabouts what you would say?
I mean, I'm biased, of course, because as everyone watches from this channel, we love Bruno, and I think 100 million for a player of his quality in today's market, in a very inflated market, I think it's a fair price. How many teams can trigger that? Well, maybe we might find out, but I think it's a fair value for me. But I agree with what Eddie Howe said in terms of the window between start May, end of June, or end of May?
End of May to the end of June, basically. The last week in May to the last week.
It just takes away that sort of I say this now, but it takes away that uncertainty after. So once the June period's out of the way, maybe you can look to plan with Bruno for the season. It ends amount of transfer speculation. I say that now. I wouldn't be surprised if the release clause isn't triggered and there's talk about bids coming in a lower value and etc. and things like that.
Agreements with if a Champions League club comes in with 80 million, things like that. I actually think in a lot of ways it's a bit of a double-edged sword for Newcastle. Okay, you can breathe that sigh of relief at the end of June if that clause isn't triggered, but then what's stopping clubs coming in and bidding 80, 90 million and Bruno going, actually, Champions League club, they're winning things or competing to win things, I want to speak to them. So yeah, it takes the control. Well, Newcastle would be in control to an extent, but the control of the actual transfer fee then becomes a bit of a free fall, and then you've got 2 months of the summer, which, I mean, it's better than it being the full summer, but yeah, I think it is a bit of a double-edged sword in some ways.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, you're right there. There's a period where if someone wants to pay 100 million for Bruno, then Newcastle have ultimately got no choice. But after that, it gives them a lot of control. And I think that's why it was, as Eddie Howe described, a smart piece of business, because it does put the fate, the player's future, in their hands if a team does not indeed go and trigger that release clause.
Yeah, you can always go to a club if they then come in July, August. Go, well, if you really wanted him, why didn't you pay a release clause when you could have got him and not had any sort of negotiation required? So yeah, I think Eddie Howe's right. It is smart. I'd just be fearful. Like, my warning would be, if Bruno's release clause isn't triggered at the end of June, it by no means is a suggestion that this transfer saga is over. I think it's something that will drag throughout the summer. So be prepared for that. Strap in, because it's going to be an interesting summer for Newcastle United. And I think something Eddie Howe said late on in the press conference, where he was asked about, can the club do what they want, and will they have to sell the big players, the likes of Bruno and Alexander Isak, players like that, who they could get potentially. You're talking about 3-figure in terms of the millions, 100 million plus for these players. Will they have to sell them? And Eddie Howe sort of, for me, hinted that there's a possibility that Newcastle will have to rebuild at some point. He said he hopes it doesn't come to that, but they'll have to be prepared for that, because it's something that might happen.
Yeah, well, he was asked directly again if you need to sell a big player this summer, and he said, I don't think so, he said.
Yeah, to do what they want.
Yeah. Which, one of my questions was asked if he had a sort of clear vision, and he said he had a clear vision, but again, it goes back to the full circle of the financial rules, and I think this summer, again, Newcastle's business will be dictated by that. Eddie Howe, every time he's asked about transfers, which is a weekly basis, doesn't actually have a clear answer on what Newcastle can and can't do this summer.
Can't predict the future.
Can't predict the future.
That's his line.
Yes, it was, yeah. Which isn't ideal, but I think you'll have some idea in place. You probably wouldn't tell us, but what they can do, but you might be able to do so much, but then selling the player ultimately might allow you to do a lot more. So I think in many ways you might have two plans, if you like, this summer, where you keep all your big players and you can do X, Y and Z, or you sell a big player and then you can do even more than X, Y and Z. You can go out and transform a team, if you like. So I do think Newcastle's business will be dictated by, going back to it, if Newcastle were to sell Bruno for that £100 million release clause, then it completely transforms Newcastle United's summer transfer business. But I think Eddie Howe doesn't want to lose anybody, and I think if he doesn't lose anybody, obviously he'll be able to hopefully still strengthen, but not strengthen to perhaps the levels that he would hope to under financial fair play rules.
We were saying just before, okay, you've got a value for the likes of Bruno and Isak, and yes, clubs could pay that, and it seems like, oh, that's a great deal for Newcastle. But how valuable are these players to Newcastle United? These are bankers, if you like, in terms of what they do for the team, the guaranteed success. Just an example, say you sell Bruno for 100 million, and Sandro Tonali cost Newcastle the best part of 60 million last summer. Okay, jury's still out on him. We don't know, he could surpass what Bruno's done at the club. You just don't know yet. But there's always a possibility that you can have a player that you spend a lot of money on and it just does not work out. And that's a risk Newcastle run if they were to sell those type of players who are guaranteed or proven at least at the club. And yeah, that would be my concern. I think Bruno's value to Newcastle United is probably more than his value, or more than what a lot of clubs would be willing to pay for him in some ways. And I think the same goes for Alexander Isak, because literally, I mean, Alexander Isak's Newcastle's potentially only striker in the summer, but depending on what happens with Callum Wilson, he has a year left on his contract. We spoke in our previous press conference video about Callum Wilson. Where does his future lie? Is it the time to sell him this summer? What does the future hold for him? Because I think Eddie Howe couldn't guarantee he would be back at the club playing in the Premier League next season either.
Yeah, I mean, he mentioned the sort of Bruno and Isak. I've said this multiple times, I would sell multiple players before even looking at them too. And I know you can go through the squad and go, well, you sell Callum Wilson, you get 8 or 10 million. You can get 100 million for Bruno. But for me, there's so many players below those where I would get rid of before I even consider those two players, because Newcastle, under sort of the financial budget they've got currently, and because of the regulations, restricts them from sort of going out and sign elite players. So you have to go and do what you did with an Isak and Bruno and find these players at a 35. Obviously, I know Isak was a considerable amount of money, but now looking at it as a bargain in many ways. Bruno you bought for 35 to 40 million. Again, it got a price tag or release clause of 100 million. You sell those elite players, and then you're going to have to go back out and try and find players at the Brunos and Isak's level before they became those elite players at elite price tag.
It has to be your business model.
It on paper, that might be easy done, but it doesn't work like that. There's been examples of how clubs haven't quite got that right.
Just look at Man U, basically.
Well, Man United,
Chelsea.
Definitely Chelsea, and even Tottenham. I know Tottenham example was probably about 10 years old now, but the Gareth Bale money for me was the prime example I point towards in terms of selling a player for big money and then reinvesting it and not being able to hit the heights for 40 years. So there's plenty of negatives that outweigh the positives of having to sell a Bruno. But of course, I said about the release clause, it's there between May and June. If it isn't activated, then the speculation probably continues. But if that release clause isn't triggered, then is it worth Newcastle selling at a lower price? That's his price. If you want him, pay it. If you don't, then don't be coming in with lower bids, because it's in Newcastle's hands, and ultimately they'll show how they feel about sort of their transfer plans and summer. They might think, well, Eddie Howe might think, well, I want to do more, and Bruno, I don't want to lose him, but ultimately I have to. It becomes a really difficult situation for the club, and that's, again, it all goes back to PSR rules, which will hopefully change in Newcastle's favour at some point, but it doesn't quite feel like that. Obviously, I'm going off sort of rambling here, but there was a story yesterday about the anchoring, where that would actually benefit Newcastle, because it would restrict the Big Six, which for me Big Six
puts a cap on it, doesn't it? Cap on spending, which actually brings it more to an even playing field in terms of what it closes the gap basically.
Yeah.
But in a PSR world, Newcastle still have a lot to do, because I mean, we can complain and kick up a fuss about PSR as much as we want, but Newcastle have failed to do something that even Man City, even Chelsea, West Ham, Villa, Everton to some degree, if you're looking further down the table, have done over the past couple of years despite spending money, and that's sell players. Alan St-Maximin, 21 million, Chris Wood, 15 million last summer. It's not enough in 3 years to actually the players they've sold. Whereas you look at, I mean, Man City are selling like Cole Palmer, players like that. Chelsea getting rid of players. West Ham and Aston Villa have both had £100 million player sales in the past few seasons.
They all academy graduates as well, weren't they?
So it's pure profit.
Yeah.
So they've had that, and they've moved on from it, and arguably progressed, certainly in Aston Villa's case, progressed from that. And West Ham probably only sold Declan Rice last summer, so still have time to reinvest that money. Newcastle need, at some point, whether we like it or not, they'll need a sale like that. And I think the short-term argument would be, okay, if you were to sell Callum Wilson, Miguel Almiron, Sean Longstaff, you're losing 3 players out your squad, 3 first-team players, there or thereabouts.
Yeah.
Is that better than losing Bruno, or is it not? It's an argument to have, because Eddie Howe will probably see it as, I'm losing 3 players, okay, quality-wise, and what they offer the team may not be anywhere near what Bruno offers, but 3 players obviously in many ways are more impactful than just one.
Yeah, can't argue that it's a dilemma for Newcastle this summer. Just have to wait and see how it plays out. As I say, strap in exactly. It's going to be a probably unsettling summer for many fans, probably us as well, in terms of the constant, because there will be talk of constant player sales. Let's not beat around the bush. Yeah. It will be relentless this summer, especially as I say with Bruno. You'll not hear the last of the Isaac speculation. Yeah. It's just about sort of fighting through the noise, if you like.
It's just a shame though, isn't it? Because I think the minimum target for any forward-thinking club for a transfer window is to end the transfer window stronger than what you started it.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of signs are pointing in the direction that Newcastle may actually end the summer transfer window. Hopefully not, but may end it weaker than what they started with it. And it's disappointing because we're 3 seasons into this project now, and the progress has been stifled in many ways from external factors, but also the club's lack of ability to sell players who maybe a few seasons ago had a bit of value, but the value is dwindling.
It's just PSR rules. It's easy for Newcastle now because they want to be ambitious and successful. PSR probably didn't even come under consideration, actually, but it's just such a shame that Newcastle United have progressed on the field, obviously from relegation to Champions League, and I've signed quality in terms of Bruno and Isaac, and then all of a sudden when you get yourself in a position where you need to push on again, the emphasis is to go and sell these players because of the high value. I just think it all sucks. Don't like it one bit, which is why I hope financial rules change. But will you ever find a financial regulation that suits everyone? Probably not. But us as Newcastle United journalists would quite happily see a PSR change that would benefit Newcastle. I think there should be something out there that benefits clubs, and not put the onus on having to sell your best players, because you can't build successful teams by having to sell your best players every 3 years. It's just not how it works. It's all silly. But yeah, I mean, the PSR rant could probably save for another day.
Yeah, definitely. But I guess moving on, we've touched on the big stuff, the Bruno, the transfers. News emerging out of Japan this morning that Newcastle could be heading there, which is, I mean, we get told, it might be America, it might not be that far a trip. Japan, can you get much further?
I know, yeah, logistically it is.
National World Expenses
horrible.
Will be crying over the prospect.
Yes.
If we even get there.
I was going to say they might reject it first. No, it's I mean, we're talking about PSR, etc. Then going to places like Tokyo in the US last year and Australia is to purely push revenue and so you can spend more on the transfer window. So the PSR rules are literally trying to bleed every sort of money out of clubs, but they're having to do these things at the end of the season, like go to Australia, when Eddie Howe, I think, hasn't directly said it but doesn't really want to go. I'm pretty sure Eddie Howe would much rather go back to Austria, for example, have a nice training camp there. We were there a few years ago, really, really nice over there, but instead you're having to go halfway over the world to go to Tokyo. So yeah, it's
not confirmed yet though. Eddie Howe said not confirmed.
Yeah, it's not confirmed, but there's been talk of it for
reports from Japan with dates and
exactly.
Back end of July. Opposition as well. A couple of J League sides. Brighton are over there as well. As a Premier League side, so could be there. Not rubber stamped yet, but yeah, that's
looking likely.
Yes.
Which is it's a shame. I don't know. It's not ideal for
it's a shame
logistic.
It's a shame for Eddie as well.
It's a shame for Eddie.
He wants to go back to the mountains of Austria.
He does, yeah, and I'm sure a couple of Newcastle fans would want to join him as well. But will Newcastle fans be heading over to Tokyo? I'm sure some diehards out there will be.
Different setting, isn't it?
It's Australia, Tokyo, in the same summer. If you like, on a space of a couple of months.
Poor fans back here will be getting up in the middle of the night trying to watch games, depending when the schedule goes.
Yeah, hasn't been confirmed yet, but yeah, it looks likely. Both of you can get there, but yeah, it's a blow for us, I think. Perhaps.
Blow for everyone. There's some major national titles who I won't name. Look like they'll struggle to get over. So how are we going to get 3 of us over? I've got no idea.
Third world problems, anyway.
First world problems.
Sorry, of course. stick
Oh,
with
well.
it. So. Anyway,
Sheffield United. Big
Sheffield United.
20 minutes in, we're playing Sheffield
Sheffield
United tomorrow.
Yeah, aye, big game. Massive game.
It actually is. Like,
no, it
if
is.
Newcastle drop points, basically, it's after the performance they put in against Palace, or lack thereof, it then sort of becomes very worrying in terms of the push for Europe. This is the banker, if you like. This is the one you have to win your home game against the side bottom of the league. You could relegate this side, or you will relegate this side if you beat them.
Yeah.
So yeah, got to be done.
Taz, yeah, because the Crystal Palace defeat in midweek doesn't really allow them much margin for error in terms of the final 5 games. The aware of the season's been highly documented. Newcastle need to win both home games really to give themselves a chance, because when they go on the travels, they aren't exactly shining on the travels at the moment. So if you go and get beaten or drop points against a relegation threatened or will be relegated Sheffield United side, and it just puts the onus needlessly on those away games, and possibly a tough game against Brighton at home, although their sort of form's faltering at the moment. So yeah, after losing in midweek, they've got to get back to try and show that bit of consistency all the end of the season and get that European place. If they don't, then they'll certainly not be in Europe again next year, which I think because they've put themselves in a position now where it feels like they're in touch and distance of it. I think would be, although everything that's happened this season, injuries, etc., I think it would be a disappointment now. I think if Newcastle, given how close they are, would not qualify for Europe next season.
Similar to what we were saying this time last season with Champions League, where it was, if Newcastle didn't get Champions League at this point, it would be disappointing. Okay, yeah. Newcastle, if last season were always in the hunt for Champions League, Newcastle, it's flirting, moving up to maybe 6th, 7th, and then dropping back away. But I think just with the position Newcastle are in, with the fixtures they've got, it's in their hands. And okay, they've got injuries, they've had injuries all season, but if they can take it, it will be a good season on the whole, and a lot to be positive about. And Eddie Howe's had to use his squad a lot more, so a lot to be encouraged by in that respect as well. So yeah, hopefully they can do it. But I think if you come to us in 48 hours time and they've dropped points at home to Sheffield United, well, maybe saying something different.
Yeah, it would undo the hard work of what they've done in the last few weeks. And Crystal Palace aside, they won 3 games and drew 1. Bit of consistent form to pull themselves right back into it. If they were to lose it from here, as you mentioned there, it would be a real disappointment. So fingers crossed. We're talking negatively about a home game against Sheffield United. They should really win that, but because of what's happened this season, they're not guaranteed to sort of win these games. They've dropped points against some teams down the bottom at home this season. But hopefully we can avoid that on Saturday. Right, we're getting the wave to leave. So should we do outside, or should we just
quickly do it now? We'll be at St James's Park tomorrow, so we'll see you there, joined by Liam Kennedy. But in the meantime, if you like what we do, please like, comment, share, subscribe for all your latest Geordie Journals content. Cheers.